with earning all this sort of money, I wasn't really the type of boy who would go out every night. I mean, well, living in Gumley for a start, there weren't many places you could go, and where you did go, it didn't cost you any money, sort of thing. So, you know, I'd got quite a bit of money saved up each week, and eventually I bought a scooter. Now, the first scooter I had, I remember it was a Capri, not a very well known make at that time. I mean, most of the scooters that were about were either Lambrettas or Vespas. So anyway, I'd got this Capri scooter, and well, it had just opened up new possibilities, you know. Didn't take me many seconds to get to work on my scooter, and if I wanted to go and see some friends, you'd just get on the scooter and go. You know, there's no problem cycling, or not too much trouble with the weather, really. And then a friend of mine who lived in Market Harborough, he got a scooter as well, so that was great. So the two of us could go around on these scooters. Now, his scooter was called a Tina automatic. Didn't have a clutch, there were no gears, it was belt driven. All you had to do was just turn the throttle, you know, and off you'd shoot. Pretty simple, really. We used to go bombing about together on these scooters. Now, I always remember one day when he came over to see me, all of us kids were lined up to go somewhere in Market Harborough, and he'd come over to see me on his scooter, and we had talked my old dad into taking us in the van. Well, my mate said, you know, that's all right, you can go in the van and I'll follow on afterwards, you know, right behind. Well, all us kids got in the back of this van of my old dad's. You can imagine it, really. It was the van he had used to take the sheep to market every Tuesday, and there were no seats in the back. It was just the floor, and scattered about the floor would still be straw, and as well sheep droppings, you know, from taking the sheep to market. But we didn't seem to mind. But I'm sure when we got to harbour, we'd pen and ink a bit. I'm sure we would. Anyway, getting back to my friend coming behind us, as well as being a hilly ride to Market Harborough, it was also very bendy, and my dad was quite a speedy driver in this van. He set off with us kids all in the back, followed by my friend on his scooter. Now, as we were tearing around the country lanes, you know, one sharp bend we went round, the van sort of went round on two wheels, because, you know, vehicles had old cross-ply tyres at that time, not radials like they have these days, and of course the tyre wouldn't give at all, so vehicles tended to tip. So we went flying round this bend on two wheels, and immediately following was my friend on his scooter, but he hadn't had the scooter very long, and he was a bit nervous of driving it, I think, and he wasn't very keen on leaning round bends. I mean, when you're riding a motorbike or a scooter like that, if you're going any speed round a bend, you've got to lean into the bend, otherwise you weren't going to make it. And as we went round this bend, I remember seeing my friend come on his scooter, and instead of coming round the bend, he just went straight on. Well, he went straight over the ditch and straight into the hedge. And of course all us kids yelled my dad to stop. He let us out the back of the van, and we rushed over to see my friend, and well, he seemed all right, you know. He come out the hedge a bit dazed, and but he was all right, and his scooter was okay. Once we'd found out, you know, that he was all right with no bones broken, I mean, we just erupted in laughter, because the image of him I still have, of going straight into that hedge as we went round the bend. Was we were just in fits. Anyway, I'm sure we'll have to all the way to Harborough. The only trouble with the scooter was that it ran on two-stroke. That meant that every time you filled the tank up with petrol you had to put a couple of shots of oil in, and if you didn't get the mixture just right, what would happen was it wouldn't start, because the spark plug would get fouled up with the oil, and then you had difficulty starting it. And so much so that once, in my frustration, I was trying desperately to get it started, and I was kicking the kickstart like mad, and the kickstart broke. So that meant I couldn't kickstart the vehicle. The only way of starting it then was to run along the road with it in gear and your hand on the clutch, and then let the clutch out, which I think they call bump starting. Anyway, that was the only way to get it started. So I got quite fed up with it, and in the end I sold it to a friend, and I bought myself a brand new Lambretta. I remember I talked my dad into letting me have it on hire purchase, where I paid a few shillings a week until it was paid for, and it was the bee's knees. I mean, it was really something to be riding this. One of the advantages of a scooter over a motorbike was that you've got these panels at the front which sort of gave the bottom half of your body some protection from the elements as you were riding along. You know, if it rained or whatever, you wouldn't get your trousers wet and your shoes would be fine. The only thing you'd get wet was your top half, really, and then you could get fairings for the top if you wanted. I mean, I bought one. It was a big perspex thing that fixed to the handlebars on two lovely chrome bars. In the early 60s, it was very fashionable to have lots of chrome attachments to scooters, but I remember I hadn't had it long, and the scooter fell over for some reason and smashed this plastic fairing, so that was the end of that, and all I had was these two lovely chrome bars sticking up in the air. I remember at that age, at 16, you know, I was developing quite an interest in fashionable clothing. I mean, I would have bell-bottom jeans, black shoes with Cuban heels and chisel toes. Also, there were these new jackets out. They were collarless jackets. They were made famous by the Beatles, I think. Instead of having a collar and a lapel, it would just be cut round at the neck. And of course, this would mean that all your shirt collar was showing. We took advantage of that because you'd have shirts with huge collars, you know, and that would stick out above these collarless jackets. That really did look fashionable. We were now getting into the era of mods and rockers, and me with my fashionable clothing, I was sort of classed as a mod. I didn't really want to be. I mean, I just wanted to wear nice clothes and that was it. But so I became classed as a mod. Now, in Market Harbour there are very few of us mods, as they were called, and quite a lot of rockers. Mods would all wear the fashionable clothing and ride around on scooters, while the rockers would wear mostly leather and ride around on motorcycles, and we were heavily outnumbered. And I remember when you went out at nights, you know, we would often get mixed up in a skirmish or a fight, because there were fights between mods and rockers, and this went on for some time. But eventually a lot more of us kids wanted to wear fashionable clothing, so eventually they got more and more mods about, and I remember we started to hang around in gangs, really, quite a lot of us, you know, we got the better side of the rockers in the end. And also, when we went anywhere, especially if you went into the seaside for a week, went to the seaside for a weekend or for the day, and especially bank holidays, there'd be huge gangs of mods and rockers would descend on the seaside towns, and you know, there'd be some really serious fighting going on. I know that when we encountered rockers, when you were at the seaside, I mean, you either had to fight or run, you know. And well, I would mostly run, I think. But that was the mods and the rockers. Eventually, after a year or so, the mods and rocker scene sort of died out. Anyway, by that time I'd bought myself a car. Now, I'd sold the scooter and bought this car. It was an Austin Mini, and the one great thing about having a car, I mean, I still used to hang around with the mods and all that sort of thing, but the great thing about having this car was you could pull the girls with the car. This was to lead me to my next encounter with romance.